So, here is one of the original thinkers of entrepreneurship. Do you guys know who this is? Is it Salma Hayek? What are you talking about, Julianne? No, okay, so it's not Salma who was one of the original thinkers in entrepreneurship, but in fact, this guy called Frederick Hayek. But there are three key economists which shaped the ways that we understood entrepreneurship and its relationship with markets and customers. So one was Hayek. Two, this guy is Schumpeter. This guy over here, his name is Schumpeter. And the third guy is Kirchner. All of these economists had a really major role in the initial development of the entrepreneurship theory as a field. They each had different ideas around what entrepreneurship, how entrepreneurship happened. So for Hayek, he basically suggested that opportunities were existed as a consequence of pockets of information asymmetry. So if you think about it, right? So my life and the life that I have lived is different from your life and the life that you have lived. And as a result, my worldview and how I understand the world is different from you. As a result, when we're both in the same marketplace, I might see something that you don't, or you may see something that I don't, as a consequence of what they call information asymmetry. So information is not equal, and as a result, information and knowledge influences entrepreneurial behavior. The second person that I want to talk around is Kirchner. It's this guy right there. So Kirchner talked around this notion of market alertness. So he always talked around this notion of entrepreneurs being alert to opportunities out there in the marketplace, and that some people saw these opportunities as a consequence of being alert. Now, the last guy, Schumpeter. When I think of Schumpeter, I always like to think of his ideas around entrepreneurship like this. It's like a tornado. He argued that entrepreneurs fundamentally break and shift marketplaces through what he called the gales of creative destruction. So basically, small new players come into the marketplace and through the gales of creative destruction fundamentally break and shift the dominant players' control over markets. So when you think around incumbents and those kinds of people, a good example would be, for example, Kodak. So Kodak was a dominant player in terms of photographs, but when this notion of digital cameras came through, they were like, dominant player, don't need to care. And when the camera phones came through, they were, what did they do? They were like, oh no, it's too late, because they were too late. Basically, as customers, we fundamentally changed the ways that we saw the solution. They were the old solution, and then all of these new players came in, and as a result, Kodak lost their market position and also, for the most part, actually had to shut down. So these economic masters of entrepreneurship said different things. Entrepreneurs change the patterns of production by combining elements in new ways. They are, in this sense, innovators. So a lot of the stuff that we're going to be looking at in 2043 is around this idea of innovation and novelty. So newness or something different from the status quo. Hayek suggested society's course will be changed only by a change in ideas. So this idea of the importance of ideas and knowledge and how that shifts what's on offer as a consequence of understanding and the marketplace. So let me give you the skinny on how entrepreneurship research started and how it's changed over time. So in the beginning, there was a whole lot of research around who is the entrepreneur? What kind of traits or personality characteristics do they have? And the reason why they started there was, well, because it was easy. And two, they kind of thought, well, if we understand who the entrepreneur is, then maybe we can sort of invest more effort into these. The governments can sort of better support these people because we kind of know who they are. And they also kind of had this lots of notions around traits. And a lot of these traits were like risk taker, proactiveness, those kinds of things. And some of these kind of got built into certain dimensions, but there was like a list. And if you go on the internet and you put in entrepreneurial personality or traits, you can come up with a list an arm long. But then there was this guy called Bill Gartner. So Bill Gartner, his name is William Gartner, but everyone calls him Bill. Bill wrote this really important journal article, which was, who is the entrepreneur is the wrong question. He basically argued this, right? One, we all focus on personality, but personality is an enduring characteristics. It's not like you change personalities over time. Your personality is relatively enduring and stable. But if you look at patterns of entrepreneurship, that isn't always stable. Sometimes people will become a part-time entrepreneur while working. Other people will become an entrepreneur and then go and become a staff member somewhere else. Someone else will be a staff member and then become an entrepreneur and then go back to another firm and work as a staff member. It's not consistent. So we can't really say it's a personality characteristic. He argued instead what we should be focusing on is the higher level of analysis, like what activities entrepreneurs do, because those activities shape and develop and impact firm survival. So it's around engagement and activity and processes. So then you sort of start getting a whole range of process frameworks like this one from Morris and his crew, right? So let's have a look at it. It says, identify an opportunity, develop the concept, determine the required resources. What do you think? For me, if I look at that, I go, that is a ton of boxes and arrows. And entrepreneurship is not really box and arrows, right? Lots of risk, lots of uncertainty, lots of dynamic interactions with the market. As a result, it's typically not a really nice, like linear, stable process. So as a result of, these discussions around, no, it's not traits, no, it's not personality, maybe it's process, but then others are like, no. Others sort of threw their hat into the ring and came up with this idea of, well, maybe it's not personalities and traits, maybe it's around the entrepreneurial mindset. Now, I was really lucky to go overseas to Indiana University for 6 months and study there, and I was actually working with a colleague called Don Karatko. Now, they call him Dr. K, and he has a lot of research on entrepreneurial mindset. So following is a video that he shot around the entrepreneurial mindset, what it is, some things that block it, and things that you need to consider around the entrepreneurial mindset. I hope you enjoy the video.
Innovation. It's a word that conjures up many images. Imagination, ingenuity, creativity. A recent article in Wired magazine called it the most overused and yet the most important word in the world today. Yet I believe it's fraught with myths. There's a lot of things that we believe about innovation that are simply not true. The ability to innovate, for example, people think is a location. In other words, Silicon Valley or Route 6 in Boston, that if they're in that location that automatically innovation happens. Or they believe it's the environment. So they get bean bags or food stations and think by sitting in a bag or having certain kind of food, the ideas are just going to sprout out. Or worse yet, they think it's only a select few people that really have the ability to innovate. Well, the fact is, we all have the ability to innovate. You see, it resides in all of us in something I call the entrepreneurial mindset. This mindset is something that we can all tap into, and we can come up with new ideas and solve problems and have creative solutions if we only try. But yet sometimes we believe these myths, and therefore we block our ability to do that. It's really pretty sad when you think that one of the greatest assets we possess is our entrepreneurial mindset. When you look at the world today, you can see that the gap between what can be imagined and what can be accomplished has never been smaller. And so if we are to accomplish some great things, we need to tap into our own entrepreneurial mindset. So what exactly is this entrepreneurial mindset that I believe everyone possesses? Well, a comprehensive definition states that it's a dynamic process of vision, change, and creation. It requires the application of energy and passion towards the implementation and creation of new ideas and creative solutions. It also has a sense to recognize opportunity where others see chaos, contradiction, and confusion. Now, it's a long definition, but people say, what do I focus on? I say maybe the key words of vision, change, creation, energy, and passion, because we all possess that. Everyone has the ability to dream and to vision. Everyone has the adaptability to change. Everyone, I believe, has a desire to create something in their life. And certainly we all have energy and passion that we can put to that. But as I tell all my students, it isn't the one big idea you're looking for. It's an exploration of many ideas so you can pivot off those and learn to maybe find the one that's most passionate and most energetic to you. Remember, there is no future believing something can't be done. The future is in making something happen. And by tapping into your entrepreneurial mindset, you have that ability to make tomorrow better for you and for all of us. So now that we know what the entrepreneurial mindset is, why is it so difficult for all of us to actually use it or delve into it? Well, I believe there's two major reasons. One, I think, is what I call the world of paradigms. We all know what paradigms are, right? They are the boundaries, the rules, the perceptions that we live by. There's nothing wrong with paradigms in and of themselves, but when we become so wedded to them that we fail to ask any questions of why they even exist, we then start to get into what I call the terminal disease of certainty, paradigm paralysis. And when that happens, it shuts out all new ideas and all possible innovations. So our mindset just cannot work in that. A second major reason is something we do to ourselves or others do to us. I call them the idea stoppers. It's when we suggest something new and people have an inadvertent answer back. So for example, you suggest something new as an idea and the answer you get back is, "Are you kidding?" Or the answer you get back is, "We've already tried that years ago." Or even what I call the guilt trip. "I don't see anything wrong with the way we're doing it now, do you?" I mean, how do you answer those things? We have to be careful with idea stoppers. So I want you to be able to watch what you say to others and be able to dissect what others say to you. You need to get away from the idea stoppers, break through the paradigms, and follow the new ideas, because that's the way the entrepreneurial mindset works. Well, now we've had time to ponder the various aspects of the entrepreneurial mindset. We've looked at the importance of it, we've looked at the definition of it, we've even looked at some of the obstacles to actually using it. So the question becomes, what's the next step? Well, the next step is implementation. And when we look at implementation, it's really up to you. As I tell all of my students, the decision to act entrepreneurially is and always will remain with you. So it becomes a personal decision. As you ponder that decision, I think about a commercial that was done years ago by Apple Computer, where the narrator came on TV and said, "Here's to the crazy ones, to the rebels, to those who think differently." And while some people see those people as crazy, we see genius. Because those people who think they can change the world are the ones who usually do. And the reason I like that commercial is because when you think about it, it exemplifies the courage and the belief that you have to have with your new ideas. Another way to look at it is something that I tell many of my students and corporate clients, and that is, if you really want to tap into the entrepreneurial mindset, you have to expect more than others think is practical, you have to dare more than others think is wise, you have to dream more than others think is possible, and you have to risk more than others think is safe. And if you tap into those elements, you've tapped into the essence of the entrepreneurial mindset. And by so doing, you will tap into the greatest part of your own true spirit.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Module 1, Entrepreneurship Introduction. What are we doing this module? It's just the beginning. What are we going to be learning today? In this module, I'm going to give you an overview and history of entrepreneurship theory and the ways that it has evolved over time. We'll be talking around the entrepreneurial mindset and also studying different types of entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial ventures. Entrepreneurs play a really important role in society. Typically, entrepreneurs engage with opportunities. Now, we're going to be talking about that in the next module, opportunity creation and discovery. Entrepreneurs create change in the marketplace, including economic growth and job creation. That's the reason why the government is very interested in entrepreneurs and trying to foster entrepreneurship. Within the research, they talk around this idea of entrepreneurial ecosystems. And you're probably aware of some globally, like Silicon Valley and those kinds of places. Entrepreneurs challenge the unknown and continuously create our future. I kind of like that picture up the top there because it suggests several things. One, entrepreneurs could be on a path and that path leads into this uncertainty, and yet they're prepared to stay there. But for most entrepreneurs, do you think that they really care about economic growth, or is it something else that they're interested in? Let's have a look at the next video to find out.
Do you produce growth?
Well, I want to solve problems, and in solving problems, if I do a good job in solving problems, I'll create value for the customers. If I create value for customers, I create value for owners, me. Mm-hmm. And by creating value for owners and value for customers, I create value for society.
So, what he was suggesting was something else. He's not particularly interested in economic growth. He's interested in solving problems. And by solving problems, he actually creates value for himself, his stakeholders, his customers, and the overall community. I think that's a noble pursuit. But despite the fact that we tend to focus on entrepreneurship as a very positive thing, there are pros and cons associated with being an entrepreneur. Take a couple of minutes now to write down what you believe are some pros and cons of being an entrepreneur or setting up your own venture. We'll be discussing these in workshop. So to the theory, definitions of entrepreneurship. The word entrepreneur is a French word meaning undertaker, but within the literature, typically there is a range of definitions that you see around what exactly entrepreneurship is. For example, Cole in 1949 talked around this idea of being able to maintain a profit-orientated business. Lumpkin and Desk, Tom Lumpkin talked about entrepreneurship is new entry into a market. Lowe and Macmillan, this focus on the creation of a new enterprise. And then a very much more involved sort of definition around the process of creating something different with value by devoting the necessary time and effort, assuming that's a very long definition. But the point I'm trying to make here on the slide is different people define entrepreneurship differently. Now, back in the early stages of the field, it was actually there was all this jostling. All of these academics going, no, my definition's more important. No, my definition. In the end, as the field has evolved, and as Dean Shepard, one of the key scholars in entrepreneurship research, suggests, he's like, you know what? The reality is all you need to do is pick a definition that's suitable for you. If you can justify it and you believe it, then just go with that. But more generally, now the definitions around entrepreneurship is based on a piece of research done by Shane and Van Catamaran, which was around this notion of this the entrepreneur and opportunity nexus. If you look at the introduction of the module, that gives you an outline of what that paper was around and the site. But a lot of people use that because of the ways it defines opportunities. Some essential ingredients of entrepreneurs is a willingness to take calculated risks in terms of time, equity, or career, an ability to formulate an effective venture. So how would the mindset of a social entrepreneur differ from a business entrepreneur? Kalish suggested that he identified psychologically different approaches to market niches. So business enterprise tend to fill the gaps between similar groups or tend to only focus on a couple of groups and aim to delight them. But social enterprises tend to have more of a network approach, right? So they have to fill gaps between different and even sometimes conflicting groups, because typically they work in contexts where there's a lot of, well, where things have fallen through the cracks and no one is actually supporting those people within community. And as a consequence of community, it's not typically just one group involved, but several, and they may all have differences of opinions. So fundamentally, it's very difficult to kind of manage and try and get consensus amongst factions that may or may not believe in the same things. But that is the role of the social entrepreneur who attempts to create value for themselves and for their stakeholders. I just wanted to give you a quick case study around these group of students who actually developed the Sensei wheelchair. So the guy over there, Jeremy, had a grandmother who was in her late 80s, and what he noticed was that whenever she was in a wheelchair, she'd often embarrassingly hit things because she couldn't see where her wheelchair was going if she was reversing back. And he came up with this idea with his team around this idea of the Sensei wheelchair. So kind of like when you do reverse car parking, you're reversing and it beeps. The same sort of thing for wheelchairs, so that if you're going into uncertain or unknown environments and you have to move the chair and you don't know what's behind you, this will give you like a warning to tell you if you're too close to objects. And he, was very happy with the end result as a consequence of seeing a problem with his grandmother and coming up with a novel solution. I also want to sort of mention to you this idea of the Holt Prize. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the Holt Prize. It's a global challenge that is put out every year. And basically what they do is they get teams of typically students who work on a particular problem, and you get the opportunity to win $1 million US, and that money is actually invested into the idea that you have developed. And it's quite extensive. It's quite a there's campus and then regional and then Asia Pacific pitches. It's all around pitching your idea, and it's a very set format. But it's super neat, and we actually have had several teams engaged with the Holt Prize over years. And if you're interested, I'm more than happy to talk to you around the Holt Prize or put you on the list so that you may create a team for next year, because the pitches already have happened earlier this year. And here is a list of references from today's module. I hope you really enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next module around opportunity creation and discovery. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Let's get it started.